This program is brought to you by Pussy Magnets.
Put a midge on your friend with a pussy magnet.
Welcome, my lovely lumps. Or should I say lovely labs? I'm so thrilled to have you here in the Labia Lounge. We're going to yarn about all things sexuality, womanhood, relationships, intimacy, holistic health, and everything in between. Your legs. Ooh, can't help myself. Anyway, we're going to have vag loads of real chats with real people about real shit. So buckle up, you're about to receive the sex ed that you never had and have a bloody good laugh while you're at it. Before we dive in, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. It's an absolute privilege to be living and creating dope podcast content in Naarm, and I pay respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. Now, if you're ready, let's flap and do this. Oh my God, is there such thing as too many vagina jokes in the one intro? Whatever, it's my podcast. I'm leaving it in.
Don't panic, you're not broken. Your sex education was a piece of shit. Get your flaps out and pull up a couch. It's the Labia Lounge.
Hey gang, just before we jump into this episode, I wanted to offer you an opportunity to access my new mini course for free before I start charging for it in future. It's for people with vulvas and it's quick to complete. It's all about demystifying the female body and pleasure anatomy and getting some basic fundamentals to understand your body better. It's called Pussy Pleasure Secrets, Your Roadmap to Bedroom Bliss. You can grab it on the freebies page of my website or in the show notes. It's a great little free resource to kind of dip your toe in or act as a bit of a taster for my work. So if you've ever been curious about this sort of thing and you just don't know where to start, or you want a really quick, easy, accessible, non-threatening way to get the ball rolling and start working on this stuff, this is a great place to start. All right, welcome back, Labial Legends. Today I'm really excited to be chatting to a total powerhouse bad bitch who has so much to teach us and open our eyes to with regards to privilege, fat phobia, racial awareness, and intersectionality. We're going to be chatting with Milo Hartill. Actually, is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, you slayed.
Okay, cool. Oh, great. AKA That Fat Diva, love, who is an actor, model, performer, host, and Black Lives Matter queer and radical body acceptance advocate and activist.
Hey.
She is proud. Yeah, no, when there's a slash advocate activist, little bit of a hiccup there. So Milo is a proud African Australian fat queer woman and has championed inclusivity in the queer performing nightlife and burlesque scene, doing regular shows at clubs and events in both Melbourne and Sydney. As a model, you may have spotted Milo in campaigns for brands including a television commercial for Google, hot damn, what a flex, Frank Body, Bras and Things, Maya with Abby Chatfield, oh my God, Target and USwim. And as an actor, Milo has also been in a whole host of epic stage productions and all sorts of fucking fabulous stuff. So Milo does a lot of radical body acceptance and Black Lives Matter advocacy and activism, which is how I discovered her. And she carries this advocacy into all her fields of work, including work to get more diverse representation in the queer club performing art spaces around Australia. So, I mean, you're just a fucking overachiever, aren't you, babe? I'm really rapt to have you. Welcome to the Labia Lounge. Pull up a clit cushion, get yourself comfy. All right. Well, I was struggling to figure out where to even begin, but I suppose something that I only became aware of and Googled the definition of a few years back was this concept of intersectionality and intersectional feminism. So firstly, I want to chat a bit about that and also just name that I am not fat, black, or queer, and therefore I can't possibly understand from an embodied and lived experience what it's like to live in a fat, black, or queer body. And so obviously I may have some blind spots, that's pretty inevitable as a result of certain privileges that I have that others don't. And I'm really happy to have these pointed out. I'm always striving to be more aware, more sensitive to the ways in which I can improve my capacity to be an ally and to be a safe space for others who, are living with a different amount and different kinds of privilege on that sort of social justice scale. So I just wanted to like preface the interview with that, because like often I'm like, oh God, like I really want to do a good job of this. I'm just this like skinny little white bitch who has no fucking idea, but I am doing my best. And so I'm really grateful to get the chance to have guests like you on the podcast. And so I guess maybe let's have a little chat about I just referred to the social justice scale and intersectionality to kind of give people an idea of what that is, get them to reflect on like where they sit with the different types of privilege that exist. Because, for instance, like I have an able body, I'm white, I'm slim, I'm straight, I'm cisgendered. So all of those are like quite privileged places to sit on that social justice scale. However, I'm also a woman, which is automatically less privileged than men. I have chronic health challenges. I come from a lower socioeconomic background, and I have, trauma and some kind of resulting neurodivergence that affects me day to day and how my nervous system operates and how I can actually like be in this fucking world. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you, like what all of this means to you. Maybe just describe a little bit like about intersectionality and why you're passionate about that, and how people can reflect on where they sit on the social justice scale.
I think my ideas about intersectionality kind of came from, I'm 24, so Black Lives Matter happened when I was 19.
Wow.
Doesn't that feel like so long ago? That's like, it feels like
wow.
yesterday, 2020, but also I was 19. Crazy. And, looking at lots of conversations about feminism and being a part of that, being in, musical theatre spaces, artist spaces, and lots of conversations happening, which were awesome. But I was like, that doesn't apply to me. That is feminism for thin white women, which is obviously important, and we need equality between, men and women. But I was like, I know so many people that don't fall under those umbrellas of gender. I know so many people that like this thing that we're trying to work on as a construct of the feminism that we kind of know and hear about a lot doesn't apply to Black women, doesn't apply to fat women, doesn't apply to disabled women. And I think as well, I looked at it a lot through a lens of diversity that I see on stages and screens and in advertising, because that's, where I work, where I live, what's important to me. And I was like, people like production companies would cast a show and there'd be 2 Black people in it, or there'd be 2 people of color in the whole production, and they'd be like, we've done it, we've solved diversity. And I'd be like, there are no fat people in this, no disabled people in this. Like, all the queer people that I know are in this show don't talk about it because they want to continue to get cast in stuff. Like, you haven't done it. And also, maybe I'm seeing someone who looks like me, but of the 2 people, they're both X, Y, Z. And so most of the other people of color sitting in the audience don't see themselves up there. And I think as well, a lot of this conversation of intersectionality came for me because people's discussions of feminism were always just, how do we make men and women equal? And I was like, that's just like the tip of the iceberg. I think as well, lots of people that I went to uni with and lots of my teachers would say that they were proud feminists, and then I would ask them about their opinions on Black Lives Matter and issues that are facing African, Black, Aboriginal, First Nations people in our country, and they would just have no idea, even remotely what I was talking about, let alone the nuances and intricacies of it. Yeah. And I think my ideas of intersectional feminism have kind of come about because it's like, okay, if we achieve this thing for white, straight, cisgendered women, then how do we achieve that for everybody else? And, I think it's really, really been clear in the last few years seeing how people responded to Black Lives Matter, how people are now responding to Palestine. Like the NDIS has just removed period products or proposing to remove period products from NDIS funding. Like,
Fuckers.
it's just crazy. And I think that the idea of it's funny to me that people that claim to be proud feminists don't understand that, like, to be a proud feminist, you need to be championing all people becoming equal, not just people that are like you becoming.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what I have to say on that.
Yeah, great. I mean, you nailed it.
Yeah, thanks.
You fucking nailed it. Totally. Like, you know, and I think that the key piece in there that I want to like extrapolate on is like people have this idea of what equality is, and they equate it. This is a lot of ek words, but they equate equality with equity. And they're not the same fucking thing. And equality is like, you know, giving everyone the same resources or treatment or tools or whatever, but not acknowledging that they've come from a totally different starting place. And so giving, like, you know, like I think of this maybe you've seen it, it's like a little like drawing, like comic kind of graphic to kind of illustrate it, where there's like a fence and everyone's trying to get a look over the fence. It's like they're trying to get a leg up in life. And some people in this drawing are really tall, some are really short, some are disabled, some are, you know, coming from a really different starting place, and they've been all given the same box to stand on. And so the tall person standing on the box can see way over the fence. The short person still can't see over the fence. And that's equality. And then you think about the fact that how it actually is like some of the tall people get like 5 boxes to stand on, and then they're really tall. And then some of the shorter people in this illustration, and short people might mean that they have some sort of, you know, handicap to privilege. They are dug into a hole in the ground, so they're even lower down and definitely can't see over the fence. And then what equity would be is like taking into consideration, oh, that short person needs more than 1 box to see over the fence. Oh, they're handicapped. They've got either, you know, less privilege because of the color of their skin, or they have a disability, or they have less capacity to earn as much money. And so therefore they need 5 boxes so that they're standing just as high above the fence and getting a look over. And that tall person, you know, doesn't quite need as many boxes. Not, you know, it's like, it's a very like helpful visual way of understanding like equality means fucking shit if you're not taking into consideration all of these other factors. And that's where that intersectionality comes in, you know, because some people have privilege in some departments and then not in others. Some people have like multiple, that, you know, like with you, queer, fat and black, those are 3 different areas on the social justice scale where you will be treated differently. You will potentially have less opportunities, less doors opening for you. People might see you as less worthy of love or respect because of their, you know, prejudices, and like it's fucked. So I kind of like to explain that to people when they're thinking that they're like an ally or they're like a feminist or whatever, and actually they have these just gaping blind spots. Actually had a fucking dude.
I think
sorry, go.
Like, yeah, in terms of intersectionality, it's like to claim to be intersectional, you have to be understanding of those things, well read on those things, willing to speak up like against those things, or at least to like, you know, check in on your friends that are a part of those groups that are privy to less privilege.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, and that's something I'd love to ask you about is like, how do we be better allies? How do we become more kind of aware of the nuances and the complexities of privilege and intersectionality? How do we become more safe spaces? Because, you know, I think people, they want to do better and they try, and like myself included, like I'm still really learning and working on this stuff. I'm definitely not an expert, and I definitely don't do it perfectly all the time at all. And then there's people that are even less aware and, you know, have a lifetime of societal conditioning and prejudices that they may not even be aware of to begin with. So yeah, I'd love to, and people that like something that I remember just being like, oh my God, it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me a bunch of years ago, was hearing about like how people who might have either a disability or in a fat body or whatever else don't love the inspiration porn of like fucking really privileged people being like, go you, like good on you for being at the gym, or like, you go girl, like you're such an inspiration. And that's probably the extent of like their like, you know, quote unquote allyship. Like they think that they're being, you know, a friend to the fat people by being like, high five, you fucking, I'm so proud of you for exercising, like, or whatever, or you know, for people with a physical disability, like achieving some, I don't know, sports award or something. It's like, yeah, that kind of inspiration porn. Sometimes that's the extent of like where people get to with trying to be aware. And so I'd love to hear from you, like some of the blind spots that people without without, you know, much awareness of this sort of privilege stuff have, like the traps we might fall into, the shit that
Oh,
we might
100%.
say.
I think that the best ways to be an ally, like first and foremost, is if you see someone perpetuating problematic behavior, to call it out and not leave it up to the person that is experiencing, you know, whatever, fat phobia, racism, da 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 da. Because normally, I mean, I am obviously so well spoken, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and I still, you know, when something racist happens, go through a moment of shock of just like, whoa, that just happened to me. Like the other day, me and my friends were walking somewhere and some guys rode past and just screamed the N-word at us. And like, I'm so like, you know, well read, well spoken, speak about these things. And I still was just like, whoa, that guy just said the N-word. That's crazy. And like in that moment, I needed my friends to, and they did, you know, be with me and be like, are you okay? But also I needed them to be the ones to be like, fuck you, man, don't say that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's big. I think being well read, like trying to keep up with things that are going on in the world and calling that out and, you know, analyzing your own reactions to things. Because I think, I don't remember where I read this. It was a wonderful think piece I read in 2020, but it's like the idea that we're kind of all born racist, fat phobic, because that is, you know, that's what society and the world kind of feeds you, is to be like that. Even if you don't think you are, like, you have to actively, you have to be actively anti-racist. You can't just not be racist, or you're not fat phobic, or you're not ableist because you believe you are. Like, you have to actively do that.
Yeah.
And I think
it's the water we're swimming in.
Exactly. It's like you have to be well educated or well diversified in your life. I think making sure that the media you ingest, the people you follow are from diverse walks of life. If everybody that you follow is a thin white person, then that's kind of going to be your range of knowledge. And that's going to be all that you hear about in terms of lived experience. And I really do think that, you know, that is important, to make sure that, like, I remember seeing a thing that was like, if all of your friends are white, that's strange. All your friends should not be white. That's weird. If all of your friends are able-bodied, that's weird. All of your friends should not be able-bodied. Like, we have such a diverse walk of life, and I think the people that you keep around you is a really good example of what you deem to be good people and what you deem to be right and what you want to associate yourself with. And if you're someone that wants to be actively not racist, fatphobic, ableist, homophobic, transphobic, you have to have those people in your life, and you have to show that you are a safe space for that. And I think the words can only do so much. But onwards, I think thinking about the way that you speak about things and that you speak about yourself and the biases that you carry is important. if you are fine with other people being fat, but not with the idea of yourself being fat, that's probably not conducive of being a good friend and ally to fat people. And something that I think really sticks with me as well, I heard Carly Findlay say this once. And I think I then stretched it to also including fat people. But disability is it's like a oppressed group that is not blocked off from anyone. Like, you can't be born white and end your life black, but you can start your life able-bodied and end your life and like your life finishes and you're disabled. Like, it's disability and becoming fat are not exclusive groups. Like, they're both groups that anybody can become a part of. And I think that people really forget that. Like, like they're both, like, you know, everyone I feel like has had an experience where you take a medication and you gain weight, or you stop taking a medication and you gain weight, or, you know, you eat certain foods, or you don't do something, or you do something, or you have like a sign for me that my depression is getting bad is if I start gaining weight. Like, my body just holds on to things in a different way when I'm not feeling good mentally. And it's like they're non-exclusive groups. Anybody can be a part of it. And I feel like people's fear of becoming fat or disabled comes from the ways that they think about those groups of people and being like, I don't want to be a part of that, and I don't want to get treated in that way. But it wouldn't be something to fear if people weren't so horrific to those groups of people. So I think they're my quick, fast, surefire ally tips.
Yeah, and it's so bang on and so valuable. Like this, and I've got some questions like later around like internalized, you know, fat phobia or racism or whatever that's like potentially more insidious and sort of, you know, deep rooted and sneaky that some people might not even be aware of having. But I loved what you said about trying to diversify, like, you know, your friendships and failing that. Because I guess, like, for me, I'm like, oh, some people are so introverted and some people, like, the area that I grew up, luckily I moved to Melbourne, which is way more diverse. And now my friends are a lot more diverse. But I grew up in a tiny little country town that was so fucking white and so just straighty 180 kind of thing, and I didn't really have access to like diverse groups of people, and so all of my friends did wind up being just sort of, you know, a bunch of white people. And then when I moved to Melbourne, that sort of changed, but, you know, making friends and meeting people in diverse ways can be tricky if, you know, if you're very introverted or you have social anxiety or you have a particular, like, I'm self-employed, so I don't get out much and I don't kind of have colleagues, or, you know, I didn't go to uni where I met a lot of different people. So there's sort of slightly less kind of scope for me to meet lots of different people from different walks of life, because I kind of just hang out in like some pretty similar spots. But I think, like, you know, the people that you follow, the books that you read, the podcasts you listen to, all of these sort of influences, this input, it's really important to at the very least make sure that is more diverse, so you're not just kind of living in this echo chamber. And something that I kind of did recently for I was doing like a like racial sensitivity awareness training, and this amazing facilitator, Kwai, he gave us this homework to like find someone on the complete opposite end of the social justice, like, privilege spectrum to us, and chat with them and sort of just try to like get to know like their life experience, and how they get around living in the body that they're in, and reflect on that and things. And I noticed that I was really uncomfortable with how that almost made me, and this was just part of the thing that we all unpacked and he was kind of aiming for as well, as a facilitator of that work. I started noticing that I almost started seeing people that were, you know, maybe had black brown skin or were disabled or something as like this object of like fulfilling my homework, and I was like feeling gross and uncomfortable about like wanting to approach them to like get something from them by being like, hey, I want to like pick your brains and like have this conversation about your fucking like lifelong racial trauma, you know. And I didn't feel like me as a white person could kind of approach someone and do that and still be a safe space. So I guess there's a way to do it, and it was an interesting kind of experiment to notice in me that felt confronting, and I didn't want to objectify these people just because that we were being asked to find someone different to us, and kind of, you know, use that as part of our homework or this experiment. But yeah, also what you're saying about the, you know, being the one to call out stuff and stand up for your friends or for someone you see on a train or whatever, is so fucking important, because the person who that, like, you know, racial aggression is directed to, for instance, or the person who's got something being directed to them, like that is going to be triggering a trauma response in their nervous system. That is going to be shutting down a part of them. That means it's very difficult for them to, you know, especially after a lifetime of having to try to do this, to stand up for themselves or speak up. So to kind of just take that off their plate, because they're already having this like awful experience of receiving, you know, someone saying the N-word to them, for instance, like you the other day, that's like the very least that you can do. And also putting yourself as the more privileged person, potentially if you're in a white body or a thin body or whatever, putting yourself in the line of fire instead, so that you're taking the brunt of some of that for them, rather than them having to not only receive that aggression and then also try to like say something back or handle it or whatever. Yeah. It's like, no. It's like, yeah. So I love that you mentioned that.
Thanks.
Yeah, there was a lot of word salad just going on then on my behalf. There's so many things I want to like talk about and address, but
No, thanks. It's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Someone else's perspective.
Yeah. I'm like curious to hear, because I think something that can help with, you know, erasing some of the blind spots, because, you know, if people with privilege often can't see it. They don't know they have the fucking privilege because they've got it. They've never really had to. And that's where, like, you know, I think with the category of like disability or becoming fat, like people who have had privilege in those areas prior can then get a like lived experience of like that privilege being taken away, and then it would probably draw it into their focus. But I think, you know, failing that, if you are just kind of getting around with this sort of, you know, either beauty privilege or thin privilege or white privilege, a really great way to start to highlight some of the blind spots and get you to reflect is like hearing from people about their experience. Like it's so unbelievably shocking to me that someone whipped out the N-word out of nowhere to you, but that's because like I never see that happen because I'm not Black. So like for you, it's probably still shocking, but it's also like you're maybe a bit more used to that stuff happening. So I'd love to hear from you, like some of the ways that you experience life differently because you are in a fat body, or because you are queer, because you are a woman of color, things that like maybe someone like me would just never experience or even know was going on because I don't see it. Hey, baby babes. Sorry to interrupt. I just had to pop my head into the lounge here and mention another virtual lounge that I'd love you to get around. It's the Labia Lounge Facebook group that I've created for listeners of the potty to mingle in. There you'll find extra bits and bobs like freebies, behind the scenes, or discounts for offerings from guests who have been interviewed on the podcast. There'll also be, hopefully, inspiring, thought-provoking conversations and support from a community of labial legends like yourself. My vision for this is that it becomes a really supportive, educational, and hilarious resource for you to have more access to me and a safe space to ask questions you can't ask anywhere else. So head over to the links in the show notes or look up the Labia Lounge group in Facebook, and I'll see you in there. And now, back to the episode.
Well, I mean, it's kind of all the ways that you would expect. Like it's, you know, going to the shops. I like, you know, I'm hyper aware of what I am acting like, because I'm like, I don't want to get accused of stealing. I always am like, when I'm out and about in public, make sure that I have all of the things that I need to have to like be on the train and there and prepared. I remember getting on the train as a teenager with some friends, and I'd lost my ticket, and I like broke down. I was like, oh no. And my friend was like, why are you so stressed? Just tell them that you lost it. And I was like, I'm still going to get fined. And she was like, oh, just take mine. I'll just say that I lost mine. And I was like, I just could not ever imagine not getting in trouble for doing something like that. You know, like being a fat person, lots of public architecture is not made with someone with a butt as big as mine, you know? Like, you know, traveling is just like a stressful time when you're a fat person, even just for like the way people treat you sometimes. Like, oh, I'm sitting next to the fat person. And I mean, we're seeing crazy amounts of homophobia in the world at the moment. Like, you know, the government's not willing to take a stance on conversion therapy, and it's 2024, you know? It's like, yeah, I mean, there's so many ways. And I mean, I feel like it doesn't take much for the imagination to kind of go there. And if your imagination is you know, I feel like people listening to this and you and I would feel like we are woke and, you know, allies / members of those communities. But imagine that you're not that kind of person, and it's just like shouting the N-word to someone on the street is nothing to you. You know, calling someone a faggot is nothing to you. But like, yeah, you know, all those kinds of things happen to me. And I mean, sometimes it's not indicative. I mean, you know what? Actually, I take that back. None of it is indicative of me. Like, it's just how people want to treat someone that is like me or looks like me. But yeah, I mean, it's all based on other people and their prejudice and lack of wanting to, you know, actively wanting to make sure that there is no connect with me and them. Be like, I'm nothing like that. You're this, you're that, and I'm not those things.
Yeah. Something that I feel like was quite shocking to me a few years ago. Like, I had a friend who was like talking about fat people, like automatically assuming that they're lazy and they're just like less of a human in some way, and that it's like their fault. And I just could not believe, he's an intelligent guy, and I just couldn't even believe I was hearing it, because I suppose, I'm in this woke bubble and I like forget that some people still hold these views, and see certain people as less deserving of respect or love or time. And then, a really confronting thing that I've like faced and reflected in myself is like, because like you said, it's the water we're swimming in. We are born into the sort of society with all of the prejudices and racism and fat phobia and everything like that, and the media that I grew up consuming in the 90s, like gee whiz, talk about junkie chic, like, like the thin stuff and the kind of like ideal default body as like the baseline of like, this is beauty, that we're told to conform to. Like, all of these influences, whether you consciously agree with them or want to identify with them or not, like they still affect you. And, I still kind of like would notice that I was probably less likely to, and this is like, I feel disgusted in myself, so it's pretty vulnerable to admit this, but a few years ago when I was reflecting on this stuff, I noticed I was probably less likely to talk to a really fat person at a party than maybe like a thin attractive person, and I was less motivated to kind of make an effort. And you just start thinking like, this is what they're talking about when they're like, we feel invisible. And it's with ageism as well. It's like beauty privilege has a whole bunch of facets. But it's really hectic when you start admitting to yourself that even though like you don't back it, it's in you a little bit. Some of this like either fat phobia or like sort of like really, really covert undercover little bits of racism that you wouldn't have even been aware of, and you don't identify with being racist, but it's like you've kind of been brainwashed from all angles from the
But it's
moment you came out of the womb.
I don't think anybody. Obviously, I think okay, that's hyperbole. I think a very small amount of people would identify boldly and bravely with racism, fat phobia, ableism, da 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 da. Because people just don't. They're like, I'm not racist. Aboriginal people are just like that. I'm not racist. Black people are just more likely to steal. I'm not racist, but Asian people are smarter than everybody. I'm not prejudiced, but Jewish people are running the world. Like, it's just, people really do believe those things to be true because it's the way that media is made. It's the way that people in positions of power talk about those groups of people. It's the way people's parents talk about those groups of people. Like, it's so insidious. And I mean, even like, like my family believe in me and support me, but I definitely think some things my family have said, I've gone, like, that's me that you're talking about. And they're like, but you're not like all the rest of them. And I'm like, no, but I am. I am like all of the rest of them. And I think people forget that. And I mean, like, even you talking about, like your own internalized biases with fat people. It's like, that's something that I think I deal with in all of my walks of life, is like people thinking that you're less able to do something or you're not capable of doing something because you're fat, because I'm black, because I'm gay. And it's like, I just happen to be those things. Like a big thing I used to say when people, I was like my partner, my housemate, lots of people that I'm with and around, I'm like, I do more physical things than all of those people. They are just skinny. Like, me and my partner eat pretty much the same thing. And then my partner, bless their heart, not an exercise queen. And like, I am just like literally double their size. Like, there's no pussyfooting around that. Like, I am that size. And I mean, even language, like, yeah. I think it's just like, it's just the way that the world is. And I think we all actively have to work towards changing those belief systems. Even like me using pussyfooting around, like, I feel like that is born out of misogyny in some way.
True.
But it's like a part of lingo. And I mean, as well, I think there's a really there is quite unique racism, fat phobia, misogyny, homophobia, ableism, the list goes on, that happens in our Australian culture, like our Aussie who gives a shit, nothing's that serious culture, where it's like, nothing's that serious, but you did say that. And it's like, oh, well, it's, larrikin, just a joke mentality. And it's like, until when is it not just a joke anymore?
Yeah, no, totally. And it's cool that you pointed out like that slang, because I feel like I grew up in a small country town in Australia, very much that kind of like, don't take yourself too seriously, like lots of that, taking the piss kind of humor. I use a lot of slang, and I was a bit of a tomboy and I wanted to fit in with the boys growing up. So I had a lot of like slang in my vernacular that I've just been like systematically realizing as I say, oh, nah, no, I can't say that. That's not really okay anymore. And I never even realized it was just so normalized, like all of the slang in high school, like, oh, that's fucking gay, or like whatever. Like it wasn't because I was homophobic. It was because that was the slang, and that's, but as you're saying, like, you can't just be like, well, I'm not racist and that's enough. You have to actively, and it, sure, it's a pain in the ass. I've had to like try to train myself to, and it's like, trying to be proactive and intentional about the pronouns that we use. Like, yes, it's inconvenient to have to try to say they when you've known this person as a her your whole life. But you know what's more inconvenient is like life for them.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
so it's like it's a small price to
No,
pay
it's
and
like
effort to make.
it's inconvenient until it becomes a part of your practice. Like, it feels inconvenient because you're not used to it, but like
Yeah.
if you never wiped your ass and started doing that, that would feel
Mhm.
inconvenient until it
Exactly.
became a part of your practice.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and it's just like it's just a small like it's a bit of effort to make somebody else feel seen and respected and safer around you and heard and like like compared to like the pain that it's inflicting for someone to just be constantly misgendered for like most of their life and in most spaces, for you to just have to try to and it's like a bit of a problem I have with like a lot of boomers are very set in their ways and I can see why. Like, I probably was like that back in the day too, before I had more
yeah,
understanding and had more diverse friends and had heard about different experiences from them and been like, oh, fuck, like, I need to check myself. So I think, yeah, like, it's work and it's effort and it's ongoing, but it's like, you got to do that, guys. Like, because it is. Oh, yeah, it's a drop in the bucket given that we live in the world and the way things are. There's still so far to go. There's so much work to do, but, we can all be doing our own little bit. Yeah, and yeah, that's why I'm really grateful to like be able to have these conversations with someone like you and
thank you.
admit that I've got blind spots and I fuck up and,
And as well, me as
it's
well. Like, I think lots of people are like, lots of people that, maybe are not my friends anymore, but that I used to be friends with, and they'd be like, so what, you're just perfect. And I was like, no, not at all. Like, I fuck up all the time. Like, acknowledging that is a part of this. Like, nobody is born knowing everything. Like,
no.
it takes work and effort and accountability. And like, I didn't grow up in a rural town, but I grew up in Western Australia, and I'm from the South, which is famously,
Yep.
the north of the
I
river
was
is
just living there.
hoity-toity and fancy, and south of the river is, I'm from Mandurah. Like, it's not. I didn't grow up rich. I didn't grow up knowing everything, and like, a part of that is, I mean, I did grow up in a family that were very, tertiary educated, but I like, it's effort, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of my prejudices, I think in WA is I mean, everyone is prejudiced against everything. It's like you move to Melbourne and you're like, I'm not being called an N-word and then a faggot on the street every day. What is this utopia? But I think, I think that there was a lot of prejudice about a lot of people when I was growing up, and
yeah,
being this face of a lot of movements in some way or another, and voice of a lot of movements in one way or in some way or another. It's like, I'm 24. Like, I don't know everything. And especially when I started talking about this stuff, I was 19, 18. Like, I don't know shit. My frontal lobe was not even close to being developed. But a lot of it is just like being accountable and not being afraid to say, I was wrong, I'm sorry. And with more information, my opinion of that has shifted. And now that I'm aware that this is a thing, the way that I want to advocate for this will be like, I think I was speaking on a podcast last week about the shift I had from being a voice for body positivity to radical body acceptance, being like, with more information I had, I was like, oh, I don't think that everyone has to love themselves to be deserving of respect. So I think body acceptance is more, I accept my body, I accept your body, you deserve respect, end of the day. Yeah. End of sentence.
Yeah. I've got I interviewed this amazing person about body neutrality and beauty privilege, beauty labor and things like that, and that differentiation between like body love and body acceptance or neutrality like is a good thing to think about because it's a little bit more realistic as well, and yeah, I think I saw some clips from that podcast of you speaking, and I was like, fuck yeah, get it, girl. Loved how you were like articulating all of that. But that could be a whole episode of itself. I'd love to fit in the segment "Get Pregnant and Die."
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die. Don't have sex in a missionary position. Don't have sex standing up. Just don't do it. Promise?
Before I get carried away with my next line of questioning. Hey, so do you have a sex ed story for us from fucking down south in WA, which I actually lived down south in WA for a few years, and I couldn't fucking believe the culture shock because it is racist as fuck and homophobic and all the things. And I was like, whoa, Albany.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is well down south. I had some family friends in Albany, and we went on a trip there, and I was like, Mum, we need to go home. I don't feel good.
I know. I got sexually harassed on the street like day one. I was like, where am I? I want to go back to Melbourne.
Yeah, scary. I don't think I have anything like, so I went to an art school, like a musical theatre, like I went to like high school musical, high school.
Oh my God.
And so I think we got more than most. I graduated high school in 2017. But my first job as a model when I was 18, I just moved to Melbourne, I got scouted on the street, and the agent who scouted me, he was like, I have this job and they're looking for people that look like you, which I later found out was look like a lesbian, which I went, so true. So I had like shaved head, one. And so my first job was Durex. I was a model for Durex.
Oh, no way.
And we were getting asked, like, I didn't realize that a part of the job, I was like, I'm prepared to embody this character and do this ad and be, lesbian in this thing. And then a part of it was like interview questions. And so we were being asked about, how do you use condoms? How do you engage with Durex? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was kind of like, well, I don't really use protection because I'm a lesbian. What are lesbians use? And I mean, I'm bi, but I was fitting into character. And they were like, our videographer like goes, what the fuck are you talking about? You use a fucking dental dam. And like he puts the camera back up, and I was like, a what? And he was like, a dental dam. It's like a lesbian condom. Like you just whip it out. And he's like, I used it whenever I have one night stands and I eat a girl out. I've got a few dental dams in my side drawer. And I was like, I have no idea what that is. So then I like finished my shoot, went home and was like, what is a dental dam? And I just had no idea that there was protection that you could use as a lesbian, and that you could make it like, I mean, obviously not as good as a real one, but like you could make dental dams out of Glad wrap. And I just like I just had no idea. I had no idea. And I, was a bit of a goody two-shoes in school, so I always wanted to do well in all of my subjects. And, I was like, if anybody was going to know that that was a thing, it was the closeted lesbian in high school would have been paying attention to that. And it just was not a part of our education at all.
No way. I did not know what a dental dam was until way after high school for sure. And I mean, I still don't know anyone that uses them. I don't think it's all that common. I don't know, because like I think a lot of people aren't super across that so much. Like when you think of condoms, you think of penis condoms. Have you used dental dams since? I've never used them, but like, does it still feel great? Like, I'm so curious.
Excuse this quick interruption. I'm shamelessly seeking reviews and 5-star ratings for the potty because, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, it's pretty fab, and the more people who get to hear it, the more people I can help with it. Reviews and ratings actually do make a big difference to this little independent podcaster, and it's really easy to just quickly show your support by taking that simple act of either leaving 5 stars for the show on Spotify, or even better, writing a written review and leaving 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts. Or if you're a real overachiever, you can do them both. That would be mad. If you're writing a review, though, just be sure to use G-rated words, because despite the fact that this is a podcast about sexuality, words like sex can be censored and your review won't make it through the gates. Lame. Anyway, I would personally recommend doing that right now while you remember, just to get on top of it and let me know you're with me on this journey. Thanks, gang. Enjoy the rest of the epi.
I mean, it feels a little different, but in the same way that like a condom feels a little different, but not.
Yeah.
I mean,
Doesn't
I
ruin
would
your time.
rather it feel a little different and not contract an STI that could have been avoided than not.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a great story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've always been so curious about them. So it's cool to hear that they're getting used, because,
Well,
safe
I
sex.
feel like I've never gone and purchased them. I don't really know where you would go and buy them, but I obviously do lots of performing at,
Yeah.
queer sex events and
Yeah.
like at pride events. And I've been really lucky that I've kept my supply by just getting like freebies
Yeah.
of things, being like, I'm going to grab that, thank you, I'm grabbing that one, thank you. And I mean, me and my partner
Totally.
together don't use them, but we're open and a big.
Mhm.
I'm like, I need to know that I'm going to be safe and that you're going to be safe,
Yeah.
and this is a great way.
Exactly.
It's a great way to do that.
Yeah. Rock on. Love it. Fuck yeah, dental dams.
Like, yeah.
I'm just like so straight, so I just don't, I'd never even thought about it, and like I have not been in the past, have not been particularly safe with protection. I was just like, I'm in the pill, whatever, and like obviously nowadays I'm across it, but
Well, my fear has never been getting pregnant. Like, even when I've slept with men, I'm like, I mean, probably not the best ethos and probably not the best for your body, but I'm like, I'll just get an abortion if I get pregnant. I just don't want to get an STI. Which is crazy. I feel
yeah,
like,
I was the opposite. I was like, oh my god, like I definitely don't want to have to get an abortion. I don't want to have to go through that, because it totally terrified me. But I was like, yeah, you can kind of just get like some antibiotics or whatever, can't you? If you get the clap.
yeah.
Oh, it's actually wild that I have never somehow have never contracted an STI or been pregnant. So
Wow.
yeah, and it's not to say that I've been perfect with all of my safe sex practices, that's for sure. Pretty good these days, but back in the day, fuck, I don't know how I don't have like all of the STIs. Anyway, so something that I wanted to kind of highlight is like, I think a misconception or something that people often like don't fully grasp around privilege, because I think a lot of people don't even realize that they have it in some departments. It's like, they think that having privilege means you have like more benefits or like perks. Like it's about the perks and the benefits and having like lots of money or lots of whatever. But it's not always about the presence or absence of like perks and benefits that indicates a privilege or lack of privilege. It can actually also, and potentially even more commonly, be the presence of obstructions or challenges or barriers that actually make life harder and harm our ability to achieve certain perks or positive things or benefits in our life, that would come more easily to people with privilege. So it's not just, like the end of the spectrum where you've got all this great stuff and perks. It's also the end of the spectrum where like you actively have less, and there are barriers and obstacles in your way to achieve things that other people take for granted. Yeah, like, do you have any kind of examples of that in your experience or life that, maybe people wouldn't have thought of or been aware of that spring to mind?
I mean, the main thing is just like how people treat you.
Yeah.
Like how you get treated by people and by other people, and like, like I feel like a barrier with being fat is like, and you know what, with all of them, it's just like how people expect you to do stuff, how people expect you to do your job, how people treat you when you're out and about. you know, the questions you get asked that other people wouldn't even almost have to deal with. Like I remember there's this scholarship you had to do at my uni. It was like a part of the course. You had to apply for this scholarship. I didn't want to do it. I was like, a person of color has never won this. Why would I apply for it? Like, can't be fucked. But we had to do it as a part of our degree. And like everyone got asked questions. We all got asked questions. And I got asked, the question I got asked in our interview section was like, how would this benefit you as a person of color? And I was like, I'm the only person of color in my course. Like, I know nobody else is being asked this question. Why do I have to answer this? Like, what kind of fucking charity shit you want me to go, please, Masa? Like, I really, as a person of color, it would mean I can, like, I don't want to, why do I have to do that? I don't want to do that. I think as well, like, the things that you're just expected to do. And, you know, I in the line of work I do, kind of sign up for talking about diversity and talking about my experiences. But it's like, you know, in lots of jobs, you're like, being a person of color, being queer, being fat means that you're expected to do free emotional labor to unpack that experience. And like, you know, I am a public speaker and I advocate for this stuff. So, you know, I sign up for that. But there are some instances where I'm in my, you know, I'm doing a musical theatre job and I'm here to do being an entertainer, and they're like, can you speak for this panel? And it's like, sure, my rates for doing cultural consultancy are this much money, and if you want me to do it in front of a crowd, there's this fee, and and it's like, oh, you don't just want to talk about it so everyone can hear about it? No, I don't want to just talk about my trauma for you, actually. No, I don't want to do that. Are you going to make fucking old mate do any of this kind of hard labor? You're going to make him research? No, so I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I think as well, like, and I mean, that's coming from a very privileged standpoint of like having access to be able to be asked to do something like that due to having a job that is da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But I think just like expectations of what you're going to be like that people just don't have of white people. Like even like people are like, you're really well spoken for an African person. It's like, my family are half white. I grew up in Western Australia. Like, I'm as like, what do you mean?
I can't even believe someone would say that. Like, what a fucking neg. What a backhanded compliment. Like, that's
100%.
yeah. And
You're
yeah.
smart for a black girl. You're hot for a black girl.
Oh
you're
my
really
God.
intelligent for a black girl. You're really well spoken for a black girl. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not. Like, I'm just another guy. I'm just another person. I think that's as well an obstacle, is that people like you're just not. Like, I really am just another person, and people expect you to be this like inspiration.
Yeah, they
or,
exotify
like,
it.
This, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love what you said about like just being expected to automatically be an activist because you're black or queer, or and like, yes, this is actually your line of work, but like to be expected to do the emotional labor automatically is something I've definitely heard of happening a lot, and that's quite like, well, it's unfair, and it's like, you know, bordering pretty traumatic sometimes when just by virtue of the color of your skin, you kind of, and this is why I felt really uncomfortable with like approaching someone of color or someone with less privilege than me to do this bit of homework, because I was like, oh, that's kind of icky for me to just expect that they will be okay with and just sort of be expected to do this emotional labor of like unpacking all this racial stuff with me to help me understand. It's like, why the fuck? Like, you are already being treated differently and having to live in a different reality to me that has inherently more challenges because of where you sit on that social justice spectrum. Why the fuck do you then also kind of have to do extra emotional labor to make me feel
to me.
okay or more comfortable or understand you better? Like, it should be on me to figure, you know, and luckily there are people who do what you do and are open to coming on a podcast like this and talking about this for the benefit of, you know, the community. But like, just your average person, like, they don't want to be fucking bothered with this shit and have to like, then, you know, it's just
I kind of have like it's totally different, but it's like a flavor of this when people find out the line of work that I'm in and immediately expect me to like give them all this free advice about their sex life and just be like an
You're like,
ear to listen
that's
to
my
their
job.
shit.
That's my job, girl. I'm not giving that to you for
I
free.
know. And it's like you can be passionate about sort of disseminating this information and helping people understand and unpack things. You can want to do that for a whole bunch of really, really great reasons. And you can also want to be paid for it. And you can also decide you don't want to fucking do that on cue for anyone that asks for it, because sure, it's great that they want to learn more and they want to do better and they want to understand, and so it's like, admirable that people are trying, but it's also like it shouldn't be that therefore you're just expected to like come to
Give
the
this
party.
service.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really cool that you mention that, because I think that's something that people really don't get automatically until it's spelt out, and like, they're given an example of like, this is how it feels when like, I've got a friend who is, and this is just a bit of a sidestep, but I've got a friend who's Israeli, and obviously with all this stuff with Palestine, like she's been having a whole fucking time of it, and because of the way she looks, she's constantly getting asked where she's from. You know, usually it's because people are, she says it happens a lot with Arabic people, and there's a lot of like people sort of going, "Hey, you look a bit like me. Like, where are you from?" Because they want to connect, but then she just feels so uncomfortable because she doesn't even want to tell people where she's from, because that could open up a whole fucking can of worms, and she just doesn't even feel safe. Given the climate around that at the moment. But something that like I didn't realize was kind of offensive, and it's not like I never really did this anyway. I don't really ask people where they're from. Like if I notice that they look a bit different, I'm not like, "Oh, where are you from?" But a lot of people do that. And people ask me that a bit. I don't know, usually people who think I'm like Italian or something. But she was just like, "Oh, I get it like every day at least once, like whether it's from people that are seeking to connect because they're thinking, oh, you look like you might be where I'm from and we can bond on that, or whether it's from people that are like, oh, you look so exotic with your like olive skin and your curly hair, and like, where are you from, as like a fucking talking point." And I didn't realize that that's something that people hate and that it's actually kind of offensive. So I'd love if you could like explain
Yeah.
that for listeners as well, that like maybe that's not a
Well,
super great thing to do.
it just essentially others people, like to assume that because they look different to you that they're not from where you're from. Like, I'm African Australian, but when people ask me where I'm from, I'm like, that could mean a bunch of things. Like, where am I from? I mean, right now, from my house, from my mum's uterus, from Western Australia. And it's never what they want to hear. They want to hear, what makes you look different to me? And it's like, okay, you can say, where are your parents from? You can say, what's your heritage? You can say, oh, you look like you have a different ethnic background than me. Like, what is that about? Like, I think people, it's othering. It makes you feel like you don't belong when people ask you where you're from. And yeah, I mean, even like talking about the example of your friend, like, that's a really difficult situation to be in if you're like, I believe all the things that are being said, but I mean, I think as well that's a big part of just like xenophobia, making people an enemy. Like, yeah, that's essentially what it is: xenophobia and making people feel othered and like they're not a part of your team.
Yeah.
I think there's a great publication called Where Are You From, where lots of people talk about that, which you and or listeners should listen to.
Yeah.
It's a website, and it's like lots of people's experiences of being asked where they're from in Australia. And, some people, Flex Mami, Ashira Paraskevas, me. Some great.
Oh, amazing. Some good names
Australia.
there. Yeah. Flex Mummy is fucking incredible. And like really reminds me, because like you're both very articulate and good at explaining. Like I really enjoy the way you both talk. And like can articulate like pretty fucking like charged and complex topics. yeah, so that's cool. I'll check that out. Cool. So I'm wondering like how how we can like excavate our internal bias, and like fat phobic conditioning and sort of like what to actually do when we notice it. Because the first step is obviously reflecting and trying to become aware of it, and then when you notice it, like how
Mhm.
we tackle that. And I guess an extension of this question would be like, I'd love to hear a bit about your experience with like, have you experienced you or other people that you know who might be fat or black harboring like internalized fat phobia or racism, like without even realizing it themselves? Because I have, yeah.
I think everybody does. Like I think everybody it's a daily
Mm,
practice to not be internally homophobic, to not be internally fat phobic. And
mm,
I think a lot of deconstructing that is like for me, I felt a lot of shame being fat, black, and gay. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna unfollow all of the white, thin, straight fitness influencers that I'm following. And for every one of them that I unfollow, I'm gonna follow someone that is fat, black, and or queer.
mm,
And kind of, I identify, especially, and I really wanted to put a focus on people that identified with those things that I also thought were hot, to be like, they're those things, and I find her attractive, or I find him attractive, or I find them attractive, and they have this similarity with me. That thing is not a bad thing. It's just not what is celebrated in society, but they are hot. And I mean, I think internalized homophobia is like rampant, especially in Australia, of like, I'm a lesbian, but I'm not a lesbian like that. I'm not like one of those, I'm not one of those gay boys that's like this. Like I'm into mask gays. I want lesbians that don't look like they're lesbians. Like
mm,
it's this weird culture, I think, that could be worldwide. I'm sure it is worldwide in some capacity, but I feel like I really see a lot of it here.
mm,
And like, I just think unpacking it is about naming it, identifying it, actively trying to not do it.
mm,
It really is a practice, and difficult and long, and like, I am that fat diva Bopo girl. But when Ozempic started being a thing, I'd be lying if I didn't say I thought about it, and I would be lying if I said I still don't occasionally go, oh, wouldn't it be nice to just be skinny and just like not have to think about it.
yeah.
But you know, I exercise and I practice that idea of trying to deconstruct my
Mm,
internalized biases. And I think my support network is awesome. My friends, we clock in each other when we're feeling some type of way about our bodies, or when I'm feeling some type of way about my race or being queer.
mm,
And I think that's important. Keep around people that are going to keep you in check, and that you can keep
mm,
them in check. And
mm, mm.
yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I think it's like just similarly to what I was saying before about like how you're kind of expected to do this emotional labor of unpacking things or like whatever. Like you're also expected to make white people feel comfortable, um, versus because like I feel like so much of the time, at least in this kind of PC culture, sort of like we're all a little bit more woke, a little bit across stuff. People's biggest fear is like offending someone or saying the wrong thing and making them feel shit, and that's beautiful. But it's also like preventing a lot of conversations that would be valuable and constructive from happening,
But I
because
think as
people.
well, a lot of people's fear doesn't lie in offending someone. Their fear comes from feeling like they've done something wrong. Because
Mm,
if your fear was offending someone, I think people would maneuver themselves differently than they do when it's just like, well, I'm not a bad person. I don't think I'm
mm,
bad. It's not,
mm,
oh my God, have I upset you? It's don't think badly about me. And I think people
yeah,
need to be more switched to, I don't want to offend. I don't want to make people feel ostracized. I don't
yeah.
want to make people feel uncomfortable. I want them to feel like I'm willing to be accountable and stand up for them and do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, often it's more about like how people will feel about you and see you, and people want to be liked and they don't want to feel bad or judged or shamed for fucking up. But then I think it just prevents people from actually taking the risk of trying and like being vulnerable and being open to like being told like, hey, that like you fucked up there and that made me feel a certain way. And it's always this tricky balance of like trying to be a safe space and an ally, but also just not fully being able to understand because we haven't had the life experience, like the exact things that will offend or hurt or whatever. And so, yeah, it's a tricky thing, but I think it means like more conversations aren't happening where they could. So, I don't know, I guess my approach is like just being like, I am not perfect. I am not like, I am probably going to fuck up, but I just want you to know like I'm absolutely well intentioned and I'm doing my best and I'm so open to feedback if there's a way that I can improve. And I'm sorry you have to do that emotional labor and hold my hand through it, but like that is kind of the reality of, and I think it's just, yeah, it's so helpful to
And even just like making sure you're well read. Like
Yeah.
I think a big thing is like, I don't need my white friends to tell me those things because I know those things, as long as they are receptive when I tell them X, Y, Z, and that I can see them doing like that they're not just walking the walk, that they're talking the talk,
Yeah.
that they're
going and doing some
doing-
research and like actually reading up to try
actually
to
doing
Yeah.
it, you know? Like it's just like I feel like so many people are just like, I'm here, and it's like, okay, prove it, girl.
Yeah. 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 And there's so many amazing resources now. Like there are so many books and podcasts and teachers around racial sensitivity awareness and body stuff. Like there's that many bloody resources out there. And I think, yeah, such good practical advice to just like really curate the kinds of people you follow in the media. Yeah, which is something that I'll often suggest people as well. Just when they're trying to, especially when they're trying to get away from feeling shitty about their body, I'm like, well, look at the people you follow. Like, let's just
Yeah.
shake that up a
Yeah.
bit, because it's all input into our brains, just either confirming or offering an alternative perspective to like the ones that we've been steeped in from birth that we've been talking about. So yeah. All right. Well, I'm just conscious of time, so I don't want to go too much over. I would love to ask you if you have a TMI story for us before we wrap up for the TMI We Love It segment.
TMI, we love it. Said TMI, we love it.
Hey, me again. If you'd like to support the potty and you've already given it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening on, I want to mention that you can buy some really dope merch from the website and get yourself a Labia Lounge tote, tee, togs. Yep, you heard that right. I even have Labia Lounge bathers. Or a cute fanny pack if that'd blow your hair back. So if fashion isn't your passion though, you can donate to my Buy Me a Coffee donation page, which is actually called Buy Me a Soy Chai Latte, because I'll be the first to admit I'm a bit of a Melbourne cafe tosser like that. And yes, that is my coffee order. You can do a once-off donation or an ongoing membership and sponsor me for as little as 3 fat ones a month. And I also offer one-on-one coaching and online courses that'll help you level up your sex life and relationship with yourself and others in a really big way. So every bit helps, because it ain't cheap to put out a sweet podcast into the world every week out of my own pocket. So I will be undyingly grateful if you support me and my biz financially in any of these ways. And if you like, I'll even give you a mental BJ with my mind from the lounge itself. Saucy. And I'll pop the links in the show notes. Thank you. Later.
I feel like maybe it's not TMI, but I feel like there is idealized vulvas in the world, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like because I'm a part of so many, like, marginalized groups, because I have the innie Barbie puss, I used to be like so vocally proud of it. I was like, yeah, I may not be a part of most social ideals, but I do have porn pussy and you can all fucking suck on it. But I feel like
With a dental dam.
with a dental dam, I used to be so like, I have the perfect vagina, and I feel like, I guess that's my DMI, is like I used to just like, especially with men, I'd be like, oh, don't touch it until you've appreciated it. I need you to see it for all its glory. But then I was like, years later, I was talking about that, and someone was like, I feel like you need to unpack that. Like, that's like, they're like all the things that you say that thin, straight, white people shouldn't do. You kind of do that with people that don't have a vulva that looks like yours. And I was like, oh, why did you have to make this political? I was just enjoying my one social ideal, and now I'm like, oh,
just let me have this one.
Literally. I was like, oh, I can't have my pussy privilege. That's fucked. I'm like, oh no. Destigmatizing things in the world means that when I have a social ideal, I need to be understanding of others. That's so boring. Can't I just like be a bitch?
Oh my God. But and I mean, is this maybe this is a silly question, but is it I definitely come across people who have the attitude of like, well, but I'm already like, I'm copping it on these fronts and I'm doing the work in this way and I don't have the privilege in these ways. So like the one area that I do, I'm just going to fucking, surely it balances out, right? Like, can you take a little bit of leeway given that you are fat, black,
I'm
queer?
like, surely karmically I can just be like, fuck all of you bitches with your not porn pussy. But I feel like I shouldn't do that. That's my TMI, is me being a cow about my vagina compared to other people's, and my labia and my vulva compared to other people's.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. That's perfect. Perfect way to end. And it's kind of just showing that you are practicing what you preach because you took that feedback on from your friend and you are reforming and but I still think you can 100% just enjoy your pussy and and the
I
fact that
do.
it's
Trust
like
me, I
one
do.
it's one less source of like feeling different or less like it's just one slightly less exhausting thing that, oh well, at least that conforms to beauty standards and I don't have to fucking waste any energy thinking about that. And I think like totally
Well,
take it.
yeah. I try not to, like, I used to like brag about it. I'd be like, do you want to see? It's perfect. And people would be like, okay. But now I do that less.
Well, I feel like now you do that with your whole body, like not in a braggy way, but in a like, look at me, I am perfect. And I am not perfect because I fit into these beauty ideals like I used to feel about my pussy, but it's because I'm fucking beautiful and deserving of feeling beautiful regardless. So I think that's a healthier kind of approach.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. What a joyous hour.
Pleasure, treasure. I'm so pumped and yeah, very grateful for letting me fumble my way through that. And I'll put all the links to your work in the show notes. I feel like I have like learnt things and like reflected a bit more deeply on things just in this chat alone. So yeah, I hope that everyone else is got some food for thought as well. So thanks so much, my dear.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go have a shower and go to my physio. Imagine
Fuck
that.
yeah. Get it, girl. Take that perfect pussy off to the physio.
I will. It's a task that only I could possibly be burdened with, but I will carry on with my proud flaps.
And that's it, darling hearts. Thanks for stopping by the Labia Lounge. Your bum groove in the couch will be right where you left it, just waiting for you to sink back in for some more double L action next time. If you'd be a dear and subscribe, share this episode, or leave a review on iTunes, then you can pat yourself on the snatch because that's a downright act of sex-positive feminist activism, and you'd be supporting my vision to educate, empower, demystify, and destigmatize with this here podcast. I'm also always open to feedback, topic ideas that you'd love to hear covered, questions or guest suggestions, so feel free to get in touch via my website or over on Insta. You can also send me in TMI stories to be shared anonymously on the pod. My handle is freyagraph_the Labia Lounge, if my account hasn't been deleted for being too sex positive, which, is always a possibility with censorship. But just in case the chronic censorship finally does obliterate my social channels, I'd highly recommend going and joining my mailing list and snagging yourself some fun freebies for the trouble at www.freyagraph.com/freebies. Anyway, later labial legends. See you next time.